I mean, I was told by my film professor, there are films and there are movies. And sometimes you've got to know what you're walking into.
Yeah. See, but I come from a time when movies were films.
Every day we grow closer and closer to that fateful Deadpool and Wolverine release date. I'm not going to lie, way back in February, I wasn't really excited for Deadpool and Wolverine, but as the marketing has been just ramping up more and more the past few months here, I've become incredibly excited for this. They're definitely cooking up something. It's going to be a good movie. Even if it's a bad movie, this film is still going to be everything that I've ever wanted for years on end, so I'm happy for it and I can't wait to see it. In celebration of Deadpool and Wolverine coming out, we've been going through every single X-Men movie, from X-Men 2000 all the way to now today, X-Men First Class. It's been quite the journey. I mean, starting out way back in 2000 wasn't that good, and just leading up to this movie, there hasn't really been a good X-Men film. This is the first one. X-Men First Class is a film that I've always enjoyed. Really good, really fun time, a lot of great characters, great score. Everything about it is solid. Not exactly incredible. There's still other better X-Men movies and just better movies in general out there, but this movie is still really good. And of course, looking at the context of this film's release, obviously it's kind of a little bit of weight that it has on its shoulders to be a good film. I mean, this movie comes right off the heels of X-Men Origins Wolverine, one of the worst movies just in general ever. And also in this year, 2011, very competitive year, a lot of banger movies this year. Dark of the Moon, Transformers was a great movie that came out this year. So it has a lot to really live up to. This movie was one of the lower grossing films on the year. It didn't break the top 10, but it still performed pretty well. This movie raked in $352.6 million against a budget of $160 million, and this movie ranked at number 14 on that year worldwide. So it performed pretty well, but this year was just really, really competitive. I couldn't really ask for this movie to do that good because it's a lot of great movies, a lot of very competitive movies out there. Dark of the Moon being the real main one, the best movie ever made. So I can't be too mad. But as for me, how did I feel about this movie when it first came out? I loved it. I can't remember if I saw it in theaters. I probably did, but if I didn't, FX played this movie at least one time a day, every single day on end, 365 days a year. So I saw this movie a lot growing up, and I really loved it. But taking me out of the equation, how did critics and audiences alike feel about this movie? This film has an 86% critic score and an 87% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Overall, pretty even, pretty fair, and a definitely solid score, one that I can definitely agree with. Roger Ebert is one of the best critics to really ever do it. He gave this film a 2.5 out of 4 stars. He said, X-Men First Class is competent weekend entertainment. It's not a great comic book movie like Spider-Man 2, not a bad one like Thor. It's not in 3D, which is immersive for the audience, but the actors all embody their roles convincingly, if somewhat humorously, and the special effects cope admirably with those rockets changing directions in the final battle. I'll leave Roger Ebert's full review down there in the show notes so you can go there and read the whole thing. Over on Letterboxd, we have a 3.6 average, and we have a review here from Aiden Fox on Letterboxd, who gave this film a 4 out of 5 stars. I gotta admit, Aiden Fox really summed it up really perfectly here in this one little review. He said, I think this movie is definitely worth watching, even if you're not exactly an X-Men fan. It's the kind of movie I'd pick for a movie night with friends, and it works too because it's not a prequel, and you don't need to watch anything before this, and I definitely agree with that. This movie is really good because it's very approachable for anyone to go into. You don't need to do any homework. It's just really fun time, start to finish. No need to really be pointing and asking questions. Who's that character? Who's that guy? You don't need to. It's just one little fun adventure with no prep time needed. That definitely was the motive for this movie, and it definitely does a good job of making a good movie for the fans and a good movie for people who don't really care about these people running around in leotards. But with all of that egregious prologue yap time out of the way, it's time to go ahead and start diving into the main feature presentation for this episode on X-Men First Class from 2011.
So, you have an X-Men movie for me?
Yes, sir, I do. And this one's going to take place in the past.
Oh, so is this like a prequel or a reboot?
Yes.
Well, okay then.
Okay, tearing right into this movie here. The opening of this movie is really good. And if you've heard this series even a little bit, then you know just how much I love the openings to all these X-Men movies, the good ones and the bad ones. X-Men 2000, X-Men United, X-Men Last Stand, even Origins Wolverine all have really good openings. And the opening for a movie in general is just really important to pull in the audience and just really carry them throughout the entire runtime. This movie does no different. The opening is just incredibly well done. This movie being a prequel, we definitely know all these characters already, so we had to start really with the main two characters that we all know and love, Professor X and also Magneto. Telling the origins of both of these characters in the opening is really good, and starting us off here, number one is in Poland with Magneto. being within the concentration camp during World War II is incredibly tragic and just absolutely incredible. And then after that, we go to Westchester, 1944, with Charles Xavier as a kid, and definitely seeing the dichotomy between both these characters is just really exquisite and something that I didn't really think I needed, but absolutely did. I think that we all just kind of forgot that these characters, the mutants in all these X-Men movies, are people first and then heroes second, and the origins for both these characters really shows that. Magneto just having a tragic and terrible opening and origin is what makes him a villain, and he has every right to be a villain, which is what makes him great in this movie. And Charles Xavier, a man who was really built up upon principle and class and honor and respect, is really what makes Charles just such an incredible and profound character in fiction in general. But the best part of this movie is really just Magneto's opening. That is just what takes the cake in the beginning of this movie. It really shocks you to your core and is the thing that you need for this movie to work. All right, so after the incredible opening in 1944, we go to 1962. A little bit of a time jump here, but definitely one that we need. We saw the just opening of Magneto, really just seeing his mom die in the concentration camp. All that happening around him is what molds him to be this monster that we see throughout the entire movie. And really, in this movie, I don't think that there is exactly a main character, but if there was a main character, it would definitely be Magneto. I mean, we saw what he went through, and he definitely is a villain. He definitely is a bad guy as we go into the later movies, but he has every right to be. He is a villain, and I respect him being a villain, which is what makes him great in this movie. I mean, we see him kill people and torture Nazis throughout a bit of the runtime here, and I'm not mad. I say, yeah, do it, man. Pull that filling from the Nazi's mouth and then threaten to kill him with it. That's absolutely horrifying, and I definitely respect him for doing that. Sometimes our protagonist can be a just gruesome monster, and there's nothing wrong with that. And also in 1962, we have young Charles Xavier, which is just incredibly perfect in this movie. The casting for everyone in this film is perfect. I couldn't see them playing anyone else in this movie. It's just really well done. From the incredible James McAvoy, who is just incredibly charming in everything he's in, to the awesome, intimidating Michael Fassbender, who's always incredible. Both these two actors are just some of the best working today, and weird that they don't have Oscars. I don't know what's going on there. But in this movie, they should have gotten one. And I know as we get into X-Men Apocalypse and all those other, new gen X-Men movies, these characters are just going to get absolutely terrible, and those movies are going to get just really god-awful. So I'm just going to enjoy it while we have it right here, and right now it's really good. Later on down the line, it's going to be terrible, but I'll enjoy it while it lasts. Also, up until this point, we have Kevin Bacon in this movie, who plays the main villain. And Kevin Bacon, I don't have a lot of experience with outside this movie. Never seen Footloose or any of his other movies, I don't think. So, I didn't really have a lot to say about him before seeing this movie. But in this movie, Kevin Bacon is really good. I really forgot that he even exists. He kind of just quit acting for some reason. He needs to be in more movies. He needs to play more villains, because in this movie, he plays the villain really well. I guess in this movie, they're kind of in the Cold War state of the U.S. history period. So, that's the kind of villain also reflects in this movie, which is kind of weird and kind of boring at times, but cool to see him kind of pulling the strings from the background. Also kind of lame and kind of whack, but it's fun. This movie definitely does also have a lot of spy espionage stuff going on with it. If you ever played Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, or I think any of those Cold War games, that's pretty much what this is like, and it's kind of cool to see that, kind of like a Call of Duty campaign, which is kind of fun. And of course, Kevin Bacon is still the villain of this movie, but still, Michael Fassbender as Magneto is just incredible. The bar scene in this movie with him fighting those three Nazis in the bar, random out west farm country, is really cool. He is having way too much fun with this role and with this movie, with this character. He really should have just been done better throughout all of those movies. I pray that he comes back in the new MCU X-Men stuff. They'll probably recast, but for now, I hope that they bring Michael Fassbender back. It would be a huge disservice if they just left him out. But also, we see him being an absolute monster. Then after that, we have the boat scene of this movie, which is just us looking into the mindset of Magneto being just incredibly shattered and broken and on a road of revenge that won't literally get him anything. So that also adds this character so much depth on top of what he already had of being just incredibly intimidating and a fun villain. We have the opportunity to see him really at his core being a broken character, which is what makes him that much more interesting. Really, all the characters in this X-Men lineup are all equally just interesting and have a lot of character to them that I really want to explore more of. And of course, going into the recruitment scene in this movie, which is just one of the best scenes in X-Men ever. I love this scene so much. We see all of these cool younger X-Men characters come into play that we never really got a chance to see in those earlier X-Men movies. Some of these characters, they do justice, but other ones don't get much justice done to them. I think you know the character that I'm talking about that dies in that one park scene with the, main villain, Azazel and Shaw, come to kill that guy for no reason. The black guy gets done pretty dirty, but everyone else gets done kind of cool. But still, X-Men characters should be just featured more in these movies. As we go into X-Men Apocalypse, they're going to be featured a little bit more. But for now, we have a pretty fun lineup of characters that I love all of them. I love all the actors who play them. Especially mainly Nicholas Hoult and Lucas Till are just incredibly charming and incredibly effective in these movies and in these characters. They're both just really good with these movies, and I definitely think that Hollywood failed them. Nicholas Hoult is getting more love and attention a little more recently, but Lucas Till mainly needs more work and more movies. Maybe he doesn't want to, but I think he should, man. So after the recruitment scene, we have this fresh lineup of new characters and fresh faces to our X-Men roster, but at this point in the movie, it's a little bit too fun. Nothing's really happened. There's no consequence and no stakes yet. So what needs to happen in really every single comic book kind of screenplay, we have the villain attacking the main characters, and then they fall down and get back up. So this is that point in the movie. The villains get attacked by Azazel and Shaw, and this is the real turning point of the movie. There's some death, there's some consequence, and really just the eye-opening experience for the audience and for these characters. This sequence is also just incredibly scary. I mean, Azazel and Shaw, both of them working together, is like Kobe and Shaq in the finals. They're just incredibly dominant, incredibly scary. Just really horrifying sequence. But yeah, so one of the characters dies, everyone's kind of knocked down, one thing gets taken away. It's a real low point for the characters, so what's next is obviously the training sequence for the third act. Once again, kind of cliche, we've seen it before, seen it again. But, the training scene is also very cool. It's where I get to see more of these characters, and all these characters that have character in them is what makes them interesting. No one in here is just a plot device. No one is just a random stand-in side piece for this team. All these characters have something to them that I love and respect. And I could talk about one part of this montage for hours on end, but the main part of that is really the best scene of the entire movie. One of the best scenes of the entire movie is the scene with Magneto and Charles as Magneto is trying to pull the satellite to him. That shows me just everything about this movie and these characters. This movie is very broad at times as well and have a large spectacle to it, but at its core, once again, it's very intimate. It's a story about characters first, and then second is the X-Men stuff, which is really what every single X-Men movie should be, and sometimes they definitely haven't followed through with that. In this movie, they definitely did. So as we transition into the third act of this movie, there's so a lot of meat and potatoes to really go through with this movie. A lot more with these characters and with this story. The overall X-Men conflict is very, very important for this movie. And I'll definitely admit what we see here with the, meat and potatoes of this X-Men conflict happening, it's really a lot of what we've seen with the first trilogy of movies, but the main thing that really makes X-Men movies really good. So starting off with really Mystique and Beast being the common surrogate mutant view for this movie and for these, aspect of the war, we have Mystique and Beast really just trying to cope with what they have instead of embracing it, which I understand both sides. It's something to really debate about, which is what makes it really good. And it's something that we never really got a chance to see that much. I mean, we really only see the conflict and really just the main Charles and Eric view, but never really the common mutant view. I mean, we have nothing really this effective. And what they do here with just a little bit of this and that is really effective. And then after that, we also have Charles and Eric, really the, surrogate views of the leaders in this war as both sides of the war, and really both of them understanding that the outcome of what happens in the third act is really the outcome of this entire universe.
Tomorrow, mankind will know that mutants exist. Sure, us, they won't differentiate. They'll fear us. And that fear will turn to hatred. Not if we stop a war. Not if we can prevent sure. Not if we risk our lives doing so. Would they do the same for us? We have it in us to be the better men. We already are. We're the next stage of human evolution. You said it yourself.
All right, enough lollygagging and goofing around, because now it's time for the third act. Finally, a really fun third act, a different third act. Is it the best third act in all these X-Men movies so far? I don't think so. I think the best third act is still X-Men Last Stand. But this one is still a very close second. It does a lot of fun stuff in here as well, and I have a really good time with it. Starting off here with the suits, they're fire. The suits in this movie aren't exactly super comic book accurate. They find a way to do it in a cool origin way, and the closest thing we've gotten to a accurate suit so far, and it looks really good. It looks really well put together, not too corny, a good balance of modern and corniness. I really enjoyed it. And as for Beast, the last time we saw Beast in these movies was in X-Men Last Stand, which had pretty cool makeup and hairstyling, and Beast in this movie looks kind of corny and kind of whack, yet also kind of cool. It works after a little bit. When I first saw it, it's like, wow, that's kind of weird and off-putting. Then, about 5 minutes later, it works. I really, it comes to grow on me. Beast has a pretty cool origin story in this movie, and also just brilliantly played by Nicholas Hoult, an actor who once again was done incredibly dirty by Hollywood. I understand Nicholas Holt's going to get more roles, like in Superman next year he's going to be in, also Mission Impossible and Nosferatu later this year, so he's working, he's cooking up, but still, he should be Spider-Man, he could be a James Bond, he could be a lot of different things, but Hollywood just failed Nicholas Hoult, and we weren't ready for him, but now we are, man, he's cooking, it's his year, it's his time, whatever, moving on, sorry for the Nicholas Hoult love, but moving on into his third act, really cool. Love a lot of this that's going on here. We have the very incredibly cool Lockheed Martin's Blackbird in this movie. That had to be a note that I had to write down real quick because that's just one of the greatest pieces of machinery ever designed in human history. One of the coolest planes of all time. One of the most intimidating things ever created by man. And it just has so much glory in this movie. I love every second of it. And also, once again, of course, Beast will be the one who designed the Blackbird in this movie. I mean, why wouldn't he? He can do anything. His IQ is off the scales, and he's definitely cooked a lot up at this point. Going into the action is very fun and exciting. Everyone has their moment in this movie. This is definitely, I guess, up until this point, somewhat the closest and best thing we've had to an Avengers movie. This is a year before the Avengers 1 movie with, the whole main gang there in phase 1 of the MCU. But this is a cool one. This is definitely a cool blueprint that I think they definitely followed going into that movie. Everyone has their time to shine. Everyone has a cool, fun moment to show off their skills, and it's done pretty well. Now, as for the downsides of this third act, it's edited pretty weirdly, pretty oddly. I can remember a couple of times where I was like, why did they cut there? Why are we cutting like this and jumping back and forth like that? It's kind of weird at times, kind of edited weird with the sound design, everything kind of weird, but still doesn't really take too much away from it. The main core of this third act, as much as there is a lot of action and chaos going on, this is still more of a psychological confrontation. Shaw ends up dying pretty quickly, which is kind of upsetting. He's kind of like a placeholder for Magneto and just his origin and everything. What happens to Shaw in this movie, definitely well-deserved, but he's just more of a vessel to elevate Magneto, which is kind of upsetting. I think that Shaw could be a cool villain if they really, really invest into him. I don't read comics, so I don't really know his origins or anything like that, but still pretty cool. He had his time to shine. Kevin Bacon did a pretty good job, but Michael Fassbender Magneto just had to come and pack him up real quick. I still really enjoy a lot of this film and what it's able to do. I mean, just really being the origin of the X-Men. We always hear in that first opening trilogy, Charles and Magneto being old friends. We always just kind of wonder what old friends are they talking about. They don't seem like friends of their enemies. And they have a really weird relationship in all these movies because they're friends and they're enemies, but it's a very odd relationship. It's not one or the other. They have a relationship that really only they can understand. And in this movie, we really get a chance to dive into that. And, seeing that Magneto took away his legs, and it's a lot. It's a lot of depth to these characters that I really love and enjoy. It's something that we don't really get a chance to see a lot of in a lot of, modern day movies and also comic book films in general. Good characters like this don't come around all the time, and here they really explore them really well. Now, that being said, this movie is really good, really fun, really enjoyable. I love a lot of it, but I have just a few little quick critiques here. Number one, this movie feels really fast, a really fast pacing, and it's understandable, but at the same time, I really think it could have benefited from more moments. It could have had just more things inside of it that made it a little bit better. I could have just had just more time with these characters and more time with the plot to really invest myself in it, and didn't really have that. And also, speaking of feeling too fast and not having enough, I want more of really everything, and also mainly Mystique with Jennifer Lawrence. There could have been, I think, a lot that happened in terms of just her shooting Hunger Games, as well as this at the time. Probably didn't have a lot of time to really just, really push her into this movie. And she's always been working during this time, 2010s. She definitely was working a lot with those Hunger Games films as well as a bunch of other stuff. So they probably didn't have enough, time and space to really make her a bigger character. She definitely deserved to be a bigger and better character in this movie. I'm not saying that she's bad, but she's just kind of like there in the background of every single scene. Doesn't do a lot of stuff. I think that most likely they really wanted her to be in this movie as Mystique, so they really had to have her. She really wanted to do this character, but that also resulted in her not really being able to do that much stuff. And like I said, nothing is really exactly left out of this movie. It is a complete and full film, but it could have just had more. It is a balancing act of a lot of different things it's trying to do in terms of the plot and also the personal character stuff, but it could have been done better. That's all I'm trying to say. So with all of that main feature presentation been out of the way, it's time to go ahead and dive into our superlatives in today's episode for X-Men First Class. Superlatives is where we give out all the main awards for the episode. The MVP is the biggest one of the night. You're not going to want to miss it. Definitely the most fun you'll have the entire episode, and one that you definitely will never want to miss. So with all of my egregious yapping out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into our superlatives for X-Men First Class.
You are a blowfish.
What? Lady, whatever you're selling, I ain't buying, yo.
Well, my name is Skylar White, yo.
I get a spot? Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and get this out of the way so you guys can get out of here pretty quickly here. So, starting off with superlatives, we have the best scene in the movie. What's really the scene stealer of X-Men First Class? It's a really tough one because there's like 10 or 15 scenes that are just absolutely perfect and perfection, but we have a tie, which was the first time ever in court cinema history. We have a tie for a award category. We have the training scene and also the recruitment scene being the two best scenes in the entire movie, hands down. I couldn't pick between one or the other. I knew it had to be one. It was the exact draw tie down the middle, and definitely couldn't have gone to two better scenes in the entire movie. So training scene and also recruitment scene, congratulations, they absolutely crushed it. Now, what's the favorite quote, the best quote in the entire movie? We have in the recruitment scene, we have Eric Leshner saying, "Excuse me, I'm Eric Leshner." Professor Charles Xavier says, "Charles Xavier." And Logan Wolverine says, "Go fuck yourself." That is absolutely perfect. I mean, if they're going to have Wolverine be in this movie, he either has to be a main character or exactly this. The delivery, the setup, everything is absolutely perfect and really just push Wolverine to be an even more incredible character. What's one small change I would make to this movie? If I had to make any kind of change to the movie, it would be just more time. I need like at least maybe 30, 40 more minutes. It really does push the runtime a little bit further, but 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, it would really be better. I think it would be a big jump in quality if it was just a little bit longer, a little more time, a little bit more moments. Now, as for Double Trouble, what's a great double feature for X-Men First Class? There's really only one really good option. I say go to X-Men First Class, and right after X-Men First Class, go into X-Men 2000. I think that's a very brilliant Double Trouble, and it's kind of weird because this all gets reset later on in a couple movies, but still, X-Men First Class right into X-Men. You can kind of have a little bit of nuance and continuity between both of them to where it makes a little bit of sense. Now, if X-Men First Class was a song, what would it be? It would definitely be Blue Monday, New Order. This is definitely a really good song. This movie doesn't take place in the 80s. It's like in the 60s or 70s, but still, I think that it is really good. Definitely very crucial song for this movie. It feels like a Black Ops Cold War campaign, and that song is really just perfect, has the fun 80s, oldies vibe to it, and it works really well. Okay, so before we get out of here, we have our MVP, but before we go, we have our Buzz in the Backlot segment, and you may be asking to yourself, what is Buzz in the Backlot, Logan? Well, listen, maybe you're at like a dinner party, or maybe you're going to see the in-laws in Kansas, maybe you're on a date with a girl you met on Hinge, who knows? Listen, you need fun facts from movies to really elevate a conversation. That's the only way to talk in life is with movie fun facts. So, I have 3 movie fun facts for you that can really elevate your Hinge date or your Tinder date. Maybe you go to work and you need to really impress your manager. Who knows? You're going to say these 3 fun facts and you're going to get promoted. You're going to really see that girl more often. Who knows? With these 3 fun facts, you're going to do it all for you. So, for our first movie fun fact, we have, to prepare for his role as Charles Xavier, James McAvoy shaved his head. He soon learned that the filmmaker wanted Charles Xavier to have a full head of hair in the prequel. Throughout the first month of filming, James McAvoy had to wear hair extensions. He finally shaved his head for X-Men Apocalypse 2016, a movie that is really not good, but a fun one. And we're going to talk about Apocalypse later in like a few weeks, kinda, I don't know. For our second Buzz in the Backlot fun fact, we have Stan Lee does not make a cameo appearance in X-Men First Class. he was unable to participate in this movie because they quote-unquote shot it too far away. I always knew something was kind of missing with X-Men First Class, and now I finally understand what it is. There's no Stan Lee cameo. In every single movie so far, we've had some kind of Stan Lee appearance or, homage to him. This movie didn't have it. That's what was missing. I think I finally figured it out. For our third and final buzz from the backlog, we have, to prepare for his role as Beast, Nicholas Hoult studied Kelsey Grammer's performance as Beast in X-Men Last Stand and Grammy's early appearance in the series Frasier from 1993. He also underwent a training in athletics, weightlifting, and boxing. Once again, Nicholas Hoult is really the best actor to ever live. Look at the commitment to this role for this one random movie. He's a goat, he's goated, but one day he'll get his time to shine. Maybe next year in Superman, we'll have to see. And finally, the biggest moment of the entire episode, the MVP for X-Men First Class. We have 5 nominees, 5 incredible actors who did an incredible job, but only one actor can be the MVP for this movie. And this one actor, will this movie work without him or her? No, absolutely not. So for our 5 MVP nominees, we have Oliver Platt was in this movie for a tiny bit of time, but he was still really incredible. Like in every single role that he's in, he's always good. But Oliver Platt is incredibly brilliant and just really good in this film. He needed to be nominated, and I'm happy to see him up here. For our second nominee, we have Jennifer Lawrence, a really incredible actress, one of the best of the century. And in this movie, she did a really good job. Didn't have a lot to do, I'm not going to lie, but she still did really good. Our third nominee is Kevin Bacon. I didn't know that Kevin Bacon can cook, but he definitely did. His role as Shaw is incredibly powerful and really awesome. Our fourth nominee goes to Michael Fassbender, the GOAT himself, really the most underrated actor of all time. He's always cooking. He's always giving an Oscar-worthy performance. Even in a D-tier or F-tier movie, he's the best one in it. And this movie, no different. He's really incredible. And our fifth and final nominee goes to James McAvoy. The role of Professor X really is something that I never thought could even be possible. And he just took the reins of this character and ran with it and does an incredible job from start to finish. For our winner for the MVP, it can only be one. And that winner goes to Michael Fassbender. Congratulations. This was by a long shot the MVP. All these guys are incredible, but Michael Fassbender gives a just completely different level of depth and dimension to this movie that really would have been missing if he wasn't inside of it. So Michael Fassbender, thank you. We're going to mail this one out to you. I have the award in my hand right now, but he couldn't make it out, so we'll go ahead and mail it to his intern or something, and they'll give it to him. Our final score for X-Men First Class is a B. Not a B minus, not a B plus, just a B, a solid B. It means they can do better, but it's still a B, a good B. They did a good job. They did a really good job with this movie, and I'm really happy with it. Before we go out of here, my big question for you, dear listener, is how will the future of the X-Men look, and really, how should the future of the X-Men look? I know that Deadpool right now is the only X-Men thing that they've announced so far in the MCU, so I'm kind of curious of how they're going to go about doing this post Deadpool and Wolverine, but I really want to know, what should they do with the future of the X-Men? Should they do a show? Should they do a bunch of series of movies? The most likely options that they decided to do, 5, 6 more movies with the X-Men characters and also X-Men and Avengers team up. That makes a lot of money for them, and Disney loves money. So most likely a lot of movies. But something that I really also want to ask you is, should the future of the X-Men just be television? It's a really, in terms of finances, not a best way to go about it. The most money is still in movies, always will be. But the best way to tell this story with all these characters may just be in a TV show. I didn't get a chance to watch the new X-Men show on Disney+, but from what I've heard, it's one of the best things ever. I'm not really surprised. It looks incredible, and that really makes me ask, should Marvel and the MCU really just go the route of making the X-Men a TV show? Clearly, they have no problem with giving a show like $30 million an episode, and they're already making a Agatha show for no reason whatsoever, so why not make an X-Men show with 5 different spin-offs? They all kind of merge together in their own movie here and there, but that may be the best way to do it. I know also a lot of the time I don't really like the way TV shows merge with movies. They shouldn't really happen. They're two completely different art forms. I love TV and I love movies. Them together, it doesn't really work. We've seen sometimes that movies and shows merging together can work, but in this instance, I don't think it should. I don't think it really can. But I just want to know, should the X-Men be a TV show, or should they just never really happen in a movie? You let me know. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Court of Cinema podcast. A really long one as I'm looking at the time right now. I don't know why. This always happens. Whenever I intend to do a small episode, it ends up being over 30 minutes long. I hate myself for that. If you love this episode, then leave us a review. Also, if you hated this episode, leave us a review. I want an equal amount of love and hate from you guys. If you're one of our dear patrons of the show who listens to multiple episodes months on end, then thank you so much. You keep the lights on and keep the fridge full. None of this is possible without you. I want to thank you for that. Stay tuned for the month of June. A lot of episodes coming out this month. A lot of big episodes coming out this month. Can't wait to start recording them. It's going to be a fun time. The next episode in this X-Men Revisited episode will be The Wolverine, a movie that is an interesting one because it's good and also kind of bad. It's a right in between kind of meh movie, but still somewhat decent. Make sure you stay up to date with everything Court of Cinema by following us on all of our socials down below in the show notes. Until the next time I talk to you guys, stay swagged out, stay cool, watch more movies. I'm your host Logan, and I'll see you guys in the movies.